Many often claim that the pen is mightier than the sword, but my question is this: where do keys fit into this type chart? Making a game is often easier said than done, especially with real-time combat like Kingdom Hearts, and I envy any team that can pull it off. But Square has made many Kingdom Hearts games, each with their own combat quirks, and with the series going on for nearly 25 years, a question can be raised. Have they actually gotten any better at making combat systems? Now, what makes a good combat system is a point that can and has been debated by the KH community until they are blue in the face, most of which is focused on Kingdom Hearts 2. So to be exhaustive, this will have to be broken down into some more specific points. Point 1. Everything I say here is critical objective fact, as I am incapable of making a mistake. Point 2. Engagement. A good combat system should keep the player's attention. If I can mindlessly click buttons and still win with no forethought, it makes things less memorable, as important moments often become little more than a light speed bump. Point 3. Sustainability. A good combat system should never leave a player feeling like they have run out of options. If an ability requires a certain resource, then that resource should be acquirable during a fight, or at the very least have a large capacity and be easy to refill. Point 4. Versatility. A good combat system should allow multiple approaches to success, not just to allow for certain fights to focus on different approaches, but to also allow individual players to find their own preferences for not just what moves they use, but how often they use them, encouraging community discussion for multiple factors. It should feel that there are overall no bad options. Point 5. Vibes. Basically my cop-out category for a mishmash of factors which I am loosely defining as how cool do moves look, does it feel fun to use them, and do they properly communicate their effectiveness? With the criteria laid out, we begin at the beginning, which I hear is a fairly decent place to start. Good old Kingdom Hearts the First. Your turn-based cousins have left quite the shoes to fill, and I don't mean those flotation devices on Sora's feet. Well, for one, you are scoring very highly on your sustainability, with the only marks against it being the use of consumable items, which was a standard for RPGs at the time, so I won't hold it against you. Plus, those can be refilled if enemies drop new items. This helps to avoid needing to restock the items used for the auto-refill later games have, which is more important in KH1 since you can only directly buy items in Traverse Town, or that one guy in Agrabah for 3 minutes. Gonna give out 23 out of 25 points for that. While many players joke about KH combat being just spam the attack button, there's actually a lot here to keep a player's full engagement, mostly owing to being an action game rather than a turn-based one. Your MP can't refill unless you attack, which puts you in range of your opponent, and the two of you have a major disagreement over the ideal state of your HP bar, so you'll need to manage your defensive options like arrow and dodge roll while going in to sustain those defensive options. However, Cure being so cheap does mean that on any difficulty other than Proud, you don't need to pay much attention to a lot of the weaker attacks. 21 out of 25 feels right for this. As for versatility, oof, KH1, you are not doing so hot. It's not bad, there is the classic physical magic dichotomy plus summons and limits, but summons feel a bit weak until the late game, and limits feel like the devs wanted to encourage melee players to use magic, but forgot they were already doing that since Cure exists. Plus, equipment in this game doesn't go much beyond just raw stats. This is only getting a 17 out of 25, owing to the different uses the various magic spells and late game summons can have. And finally, the vibes. The camera getting up so close into the action really lets you see the impact your moves can have on enemies, and with how few unique tools you get over the story, the game can actually make you getting each one feel like some impressive power you are unlocking. Though there are some issues, like that zoomed in camera does often make you feel like the underdog in a lot of fights. Blizzard, Thunder, and Stop don't fully communicate their area of effect. Stop does not explain what increasing your MP stat does to its effectiveness, and the fact nowhere in the game does it explain that Strike Grade gives you a ton of invincibility while using it. But most of these are nitpicks or more advanced technical details that a player won't immediately notice, so I can't be too harsh, so KH1 gets a 21 out of 25 for vibes. With all these scores acquired, we tally them up to give KH1 a total grade of 82 out of 100, which is a B. Generally a good start, but let's see how well your little siblings improve on your foundations. Which game is next? Oh no. Okay, let's try and salvage the good parts from Chain of Memories. The engagement is still pretty high, especially since card breaks mean you need to pay much more attention to what your opponents are doing if you want to get your own moves through. And of course, there is the classic card game player curse of I have lost an entire Saturday to deck building. Riku mode fares roughly the same, though from a different direction, since your deck construction is replaced with improvising the set of cards he has on each world, and introducing duels which are extremely powerful but require matching values exactly to trigger. Gonna give all that a 20 out of 25. Versatility is also going to score high, higher than KH1 even. Summons are much more usable in the early game, friend cards add a whole new dynamic to your attacks, and of course the sleights go crazy with customization, especially with certain enemy cards like Demyx and Xigbar to boost specific kinds of attacks. Riku does drag this category down since you literally cannot change how he fights, but he can still use different boss enemy cards in certain ways, and with how crazy Sora can go, I am willing to cut Riku some slack. Another 20 out of 25. Yes, that is still higher than KH1, don't get used to it. Because sustainability is not this game's strong suit. While in theory you can never run out of cards, you need to reload to refill those cards, or use unreloadable item cards, and that's assuming you don't use sleights consistently, which is unlikely considering how the game is structured. If you are struggling on a boss and burning through cards, you will eventually get to a point where you just don't have enough cards left to make major plays of any kind, and though Pluto can help with this, he only shows up when you are right on the brink of 0 cards in deck, only give a few cards back at random, and is a card himself, so he can be broken, negating your ability to get those cards back. This is also ignoring the enemy cards, which are 1 use per card, and the cooler effects from bosses and organization members only having 1 copy per save file. Riku also barely gets any of these comeback options, though he does have instant reloads and access to Mickey, who gives a free reload when used. But those faster reloads just mean you go through slates and burn your cards faster. 12 out of 25. The only thing keeping this in the double digits is that it does take a while for it to really get bad, but if a fight goes on for long enough, it will happen. And to finish off vibes. A lot of these moves look and sound very cool, especially for Riku, but card breaks kill your momentum in a fight, and basic Keyblade swings feel super loose. 19 out of 25 for both boys. Maybe if this were the mid-2000s, Riku's edginess would earn more points. And all totaled up, Recom gets a 71 out of 100 for a C-, only clearing a D because on easier difficulties you are really flashy, but Flash can't cover for substance. And now, the Golden Child. Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix. This game receives a ton of praise from certain parts of the community, and while I am not one of those people, I do see where they are coming from. Though I reserve that remark only for the Final Mix version, and yes, the differences between Vanilla KH2 and its Final Mix version are significant enough to call out here and for no other game so far or since. First up on the chopping block, engagement. Like with its predecessor as an action RPG, you do have to pay attention to succeed, especially with the change to the MP system rendering cure spam non-viable, so even chip damage can eventually become threatening. However, cure isn't the only spell you can't spam, as everyone but the higher levels of magnet require you to be much more aware of your physicality when you're using them. Blizzard won't do much good if the enemies aren't lining up properly. Add in that even outside of combat, you need to be aware of what items you have due to the new auto-reload mechanic trading the previous player convenience for infinite restocking, and factor in the management of the new drive gauge. Altogether gives KH2 a 25 out of 25. Sustainability is getting another strong score, as despite the differences, KH2 winds up with the same loop as KH1. Spells are cast with MP, this time with Cure taking all of it. However, once it's all expended, you enter a purple MP charge state, eventually having you regain all of your MP automatically once the charge time is complete. Physical hits, meanwhile, instead fill your drive gauge, which can be used to have Sora enter one of his various drive forms, fully restoring his HP and MP. So you can burn all of your MP on various combat spells or a cure, then build up to a drive form to fill it all right back up when you click the button. You are even incentivized to do this since your drive gauge fills faster while you're in MP charge. And while the original release required you to have party members to use drive forms, limiting its potential applications in some fights, Final Mix added limit form, which doesn't need anyone else. And all of this is on top of the pre-existing item mechanics, which are unchanged from Kingdom Hearts 1 except for the added auto-reload feature, and all of this totals KH2's sustainability to a 24 out of 25. That final lost point is coming purely from the fact that this game has consumables at all. And as for those vibes, they are impeccable. impeccable, outside of the growth abilities being nearly impossible to level in normal gameplay, but that's not a combat problem. Drive forms and summons rule. Magic in the late game is very flashy and fun to use, especially with the mobile action ability found on some drive forms. Despite burning all your MP, limit attacks are also very cool, and it even gives a way to vent the MP if you don't need to cure. And then there are the reaction commands, which are just contextual attacks you can use against specific enemies. Even your keyblades contribute to your customizability, as each one comes with its own unique ability along with its stats. I am personally partial to Ultima's MP Hastiga. A score of 25 out of 25, KH2's combat is held in high regard for a reason. Unfortunately, now we need to cover the versatility. I will say that there are plenty of options for a player to use, from magic to drive forms of preference to just whacking people with a blunt key. The problem is that so many of these cool options are conditional. Limits in magic need MP, summons and forms need your drive gauge, your items can run out, and the reaction commands are contextual on your opponent and your positioning if the enemy even has an exploitable one at all. And if you don't have any party members, which is the case for several of the notable post-game fights, you just can't use some of these abilities. Remember, limit form was added in Final Mix. That means for solo fights, you couldn't use drive forms at all in the original release if your party members weren't there. That sustainability loop between the drive gauge, your MP gauge, and your HP, out the window. And if you do have any party members, this situation somehow gets worse. There is no customization for the form menu, so it will be clouded with every drive form you could use. So if you are in a stressful situation and want to pop a specific form, you could mess up and click the useless Valor, which is at the top of the list. And that's assuming your party members are off the floor to begin with, as they need to be conscious for you to use drive forms, summons, and limits, and the AI in this game is not that good at keeping them in good shape. So when they go down, you can't use limits, can't use drive forms, can't use summons, leaving you just with your magic and items, which you can burn through faster than you would think, especially in high power fights like this thing. So versatility gets a score of 16 out of 25, only this high since the issues don't show themselves until you are in the end game, but that's where details like this are the most important. This leaves KH2 Final Mix with a grand total of 90 out of 100 for an A- grade. I feel like that score shouldn't be what follows that rant about the over-reliance on party members, but I'm not one to argue with the math. Just like I wouldn't argue if you clicked all those YouTube buttons. Ha! Thought I would forget to shill, didn't you? Not today! Plus, if you are watching this on the day it releases, I want to give a huge thanks to the folks behind March Caprice 6 for letting me do my silly bits on their event schedule. I'm going to breeze past the specifics on the DS games since they aren't on consoles anymore. 358 Days Over 2 is getting a B- since it actually does poorly in sustainability due to its magic spells being one-time consumables that can only be restored by items which are also consumables. The panel system is cool though, play this one if you can find it. Recoded also gets a B- as it's a command deck game whose ups and downs will be explained shortly in the BBS section, so I will defer the specifics to then, if only it would be an action RPG most of the time. Now back to an actual video game, Birth by Sleep. This game was the introduction of the command deck to the series, which not only became a major component of the spin-off's combat systems, but is also one of my favorite mechanics in concept. It's like all the best parts of the COM card system without most of the jank. Now I did say in concept, and my favorite does not mean the best, so how does BBS stack up against my strict objective criteria? On the sustainability front, BBS is scoring stronger than its siblings, as consumable items are something you can completely opt out of, and you are likely in fact to do so as items compete with other commands for slots in your deck. Cure is on a time-based cooldown like every command in the game, and you can even manage that time more effectively with the long invincibility frames provided by Shaw locks and finisher attacks, both of which are charged by you performing physical hits with your Keyblade. A score of 20 out of 25. Very strong, but some minor details are dependent on your specific command setup. Versatility is basically the motto of command deck games, where a player's combat style is as customizable as their deck. There are basic combat spells like Fire and Blizzard, more advanced moves like Dark Farag or the Mind Commands, status spells like Magnet and Stop, physical moves like Ars or Magic Hour, hybrid moves like Time Splicer and Collision Magnet, and defensive moves like the Surge Commands or the damaging variants of the movement skills. All of these can be combined with the various finisher moves, shot locks, and if you even don't feel like building your own deck, you can utilize Dimension Links to borrow another character's deck and some powerful abilities like Double Strike or Float, if you want that. I mean, I typically don't beyond giving Terra haste from the Ven D-Link and unlocking Helicopter Terra, but I won't judge if you like them. I see no reason to give this anything less than a perfect 25 out of 25. Engagement is where this system starts to take a nosedive. While many of these moves are flashy, once a player hits even the mid-game and gets a decent deck, the gameplay diversity shrinks into mashing the dodge and command buttons. This means the only time a player needs to think about gameplay is either in deck construction, which is a lot less complex than a Chain of Memories, or during the few boss fights so hard they slam most commands into the dirt, or when you're generally playing as Terra. You may remember this is exactly what Calm was like, but whereas that game did it intentionally, BBS arrived here by accident, leaving many of its non-command based mechanics left to rust. As a result, BBS will be getting an engagement score of 13 out of 25. Get your KH funny number jokes out in the comments now. Wrapping up BBS, this is surprisingly the first console game to fail the vibe check, and much to many people's chagrin, it's not for floatiness, but actually because of something I like to call the anvil problem. See, whenever a character enters a new command style or uses certain commands, if they are in the air, they drop like a rock straight to the floor to perform the animation, regardless of if you wanted them to or not. While the command aspect can be controlled by just not using the commands that do this in the air, entering a command style is mandatory if you reach the requirements, and they cannot be disabled. So you can be jumping up to reach an enemy, or just naturally carried up by the flow of the fight when you enter your Firestorm command style or some such, and then suddenly Aqua is rushing to the ground at Mach 3. Oh, and as a side note, ability acquisition is hot garbage since it is tied to command melding. Not a big fan of that, though I won't expressly dock a ton of points for it. 15 out of 25 for its score, since the anvil problem is more annoying than a deal breaker and can, in theory, be avoided by just not using commands. Running the math gives BBS a grand total score of 73 out of 100 for a solid C. That's a yikes, but let's see if some iteration can improve things. Which game was up next? No, it can't be you. Not you! Dream Drop, why? How could you do this? You were the chosen one! The vibes here are all wrong. None of these attacks feel impactful. Balloonra is not only unintuitively the best spell in its entire line, it is the best command in the entire game! Then, the Dream Eaters themselves are a total pace killer, as you will go from atmospheric worlds like the Cité de Cloche to high fructose corn syrup nightmares. And none of this is ignorable, as Dream Eaters are your main source of new commands, abilities, and even attacks beyond your command deck. This isn't even mentioning reality shifts, which are cool, but only show up unscripted once an enemy is nearly dead, so even if it is helpful, you have to notice in time, stop attacking, and then trigger it with a jank button combo as opposed to it just exploding. Flow motion attacks, however, are awesome, so I'm willing to give a 9 out of 25. The game is also less engaging as it has the same issues as BBS with just clicking the command list button, made even worse with the fact that stronger commands are made way more accessible way earlier in Dream Drop. Dream Eaters are also less engaging than the Shotlocks and D-Links they replaced, as they are NPC party members you can only interact with via team-up moves that require link gauge, which can only be filled by timing your attacks to come out at the same time as a Dream Eater, making them functionally limited time use super moves. The premier drop gauge isn't even that much of an attention grabber, since it isn't that much of a problem if you drop, you get plenty of warning before it happens to prepare, and the gauge lasts forever once you get like 2 worlds in and unlock high tier drop decelerators. Flow motion even removes any requirement to process the environment for platforming, as you can just wall bounce anywhere you want. 5 out of 25, with the only upsides being that Dream Eaters require some care at all in combat. I wonder if anyone will notice if I copy and paste the BBS sustainability section, as it's basically the same thing. On the sustainability front, DDD is scoring stronger than its siblings, as consumable items are something you can completely opt out of, and you are likely in fact to do so as items compete with other commands for slots in your deck. Cure is on a time-based cooldown like every command in the game, and you can even manage that time more effectively with the long invincibility frames provided by Dream Eater links, which are charged by you performing physical hits with your Keyblade. A score of 20 out of 25. Very strong, but some minor details are dependent on your specific command setup. Versatility is much lower than BBS, as all of the non-command based extra features have been replaced with the much less deep Dream Eaters, which only really gives customization on the support ability front, and also pretty colors. But it is, at its core, an insanely customizable command deck game, so 18 out of 25 seems right. So Dream Drop Distance gets a grand total of 52 out of 100 for a big old F. Good Nintendogs clone, bad action RPG. Before we move on to KH3, I feel it's time to cover the Key Saga stuff very quickly. Key, or Unchained Key, or Union Cross, or whatever it feels like going by this week, gets an F- because gotcha game. Dark Road gets an F as well, since its main gameplay loop is removing the game part of the video game. And Back Cover gets a DNF, as it didn't even try a submission for this assignment. Finally, we arrive at Kingdom Hearts 3. Oh, and 0.2 is here as well, since Aqua just basically copied Sora's homework and turned it in faster, but I won't really bring her up since she just has less options than Sora. The news on the block is situation commands, which have some certified style. These bad boys let you do all sorts of crazy stuff, from grand magic to form changing to summoning Soras out of thin air. They are especially cool to combo with the new air step feature, zipping you right to an enemy and letting you keep the pressure up. And you don't even need to worry about being constantly launched into the air, since Sora has finally learned how to guard and use items up there. Add in that Dream Drop's odd hit detection is gone, and Vibes earns a 21 out of 25, with the only hit being that form changes never last as long as you feel they should, and some of the commands can stop the smooth combat flow for their animation to be used. Those form change timers, and generally the timers on all situation commands, require a lot of attention to properly manage. Additionally, the requirements to generate those situation commands encourages players to properly juggle multiple mechanics at once. Add in properly timing air steps and guards and managing the new Kupo coin, and players can have a lot of plates to juggle in this game. Those plates total to 24 out of 25 for engagement. The end is in sight. Can we finish What? What's wrong? Oh no. This stage frustrates me to no end. Okay, calm down. It's just a video game. So, do you remember shot locks from Birth by Sleep? Well, KH3 brought them back, made them based on your Keyblade, which is cool, gave out some nifty effects like healing, which would be killer for sustainability, if you could use them consistently. Rather than the sensible decision of refilling the focus gauge by hitting enemies with your Keyblade, like Birth by Sleep did, KH3 decided that focus prize orbs were the hot new thing, which can only be earned by defeating enemies. You know, when shot locks are no longer useful because the enemy is dead. This means if you get into a fight with a single large enemy, or fight enemies that don't drop prize orbs like, I don't know, most boss fights, you have like 3 uses of a shot lock at best without going into your item inventory. Now there is this dinky little thing called Focus Siphon, which you think you could use to regain focus gauge, but it not only refills basically nothing, you can also only use it during focus charge, which is the most stupid idea I think the devs have ever come up with. So you know MP charge, where your magic can't be used until it comes off of a cooldown, but it does so automatically on a timer so you don't need to worry about it? Well, imagine that same mechanic, but without the automatic recharge, where without fully refilling the bar once it empties, it's just completely unusable. That is focus charge. So even if you do find some focus prizes, if you emptied your focus gauge and got into charge, it's still useless unless you got so many prizes it fully refilled your bar. And no, unlike in KH2, triggering form changes won't refill your focus gauge, or your MP gauge. And only Rage Form will fill your HP gauge, which you need to spend to get out of Rage Form, assuming Rage Form even feels like showing up in the first place. A fitting 13 out of 25 for all that. Let's hope the last category picks up the slack. And thankfully it will, as KH3's versatility is off the charts, competing with even the Command Deck games. Each Keyblade comes with 3 abilities, 2 shot locks, 1 to 2 form changes, each with their own properties, and you can switch between Keyblades on a dime. Equipment now has far more range and abilities, enabling builds like Grand Magic Command Farming, MP Thrift Spell Spamming, Wizard's Ruse HP regenning, various physical combos with different weapons, long-range guns, parry-based gameplay with guard moves and the new water spell. Flow Motion is back in the exact same combat utility it had in Dream Drop. Summons get buffed when they heal you, which is great. Giant robots even show up sometimes. 24 out of 25, with the only lost point being that there aren't customization options for your magic outside of what tier you are using. Come on, Square, I can be trusted with Firaga Burst and Zero Gravity again. Totaling all these together, KH3's report card now shows a total of 80 out of 100 for a B- grade. A very respectable score, though we can't get any further information since the only games to actually release in the series after KH3 were a rhythm game. Now, after parsing all this data, it's time for some charts. By putting all of these numbers into a spreadsheet, we can see that the general KH combat trends are fairly average, with a bit of a dip starting when the Osaka team took over, only to be corrected by the time KH3 came out. Engagement and vibes are basically the same line, with both on a gradual downward slope, though KH3 may have balanced it out, hard to tell right now. Since the two are so similar, it's making me question my methodology, but it's far too late now, so what can you do? Sustainability has had no major shifts over the series, outside of a notable spike for a less technically capable system, and maybe a slight tilt downwards, though I could be biased against KH3 for the focus issue. Versatility, however, is on a solid upward trajectory, I guess because the series has built up more and more cool moves that need to come back with each game, a problem I have no issue with. Will KH4 hold to these same patterns, reinforcing KH3's corrections of BBS and DDD's issues, or will the plummets continue? Will some unexpected third thing happen? We will probably never know since KH4 is not releasing. Until that time, goodbye, and enjoy March Caprice.